is NBC Palm Springs.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Sarah Sanchez.
And I'm Gino Lamont. Topping our news this evening, another shooting in Palm Springs. This time, a 15-year-old is shot and killed. And again, it's in an area that's become a hotspot for violence. People who live there are demanding that city leaders do something. And tonight, city council members are responding, and law enforcement is weighing in on what needs to happen now, which includes the entire community playing an active role in some kind of change for that area. Our Olivia Sandusky in studio with the very latest on this story. Olivia.
Gino, this is the third homicide in just 28 days. And in that time, we've reached out to Palm Springs City Council member Grace Garner for comment. She represents this area, District 1. And for the first time, she's speaking to us on this issue. And we'll get to that in a moment. But first, the Palm Springs City Council as a whole issued a statement. It reads in part, the Palm Springs City Council is deeply saddened and concerned about last night's homicide in Desert Highland Gateway Estates and the continued violence that has escalated between rival gangs. We want our residents to know that your safety is our #1 priority. Now to Councilmember Garner's statement issued late this afternoon. Here's part of that.
These problems require structural, community-based solutions that I am committed to working alongside you to achieve. In the short term, the support, consideration, and compassion for our youth and families is critical to our collective health.
Now, in light of all of this, Palm Springs police tell us they're receiving reports of shots fired every few days. And this is a growing problem that requires involvement from all corners of the community.
We are, diligently working to bring those to justice who are responsible for these crimes.
Palm Springs police investigate a homicide in the Desert Highlands Gateway Estates community, the third deadly shooting in the neighborhood since July 31st.
We did find a victim of a gunshot who is deceased in the front yard of a residence. That victim is a 15-year-old Hispanic male. We are looking at the possibilities of the ongoing violence between the two neighborhoods.
The second neighborhood, the Santiago Sunrise Mobile Home Village, also had reports of shots fired overnight.
Clearly, Palm Springs PD does not have the capacity to continue to address this ongoing violence.
Chief Reyes recently told Palm Springs City Council his department is relying on outside help as these neighborhoods face an increase of gang-related crime.
Our officers have been there after hours, knowing that this will continue, and they've literally witnessed vehicles driving up in a commission of a drive-by shooting right in front of them.
At the meeting, Chief Reyes suggested holding an open discussion with both neighborhoods and has since joined Desert Highland on their monthly Zoom call to get community input. Councilmember Grace Garner also suggested connecting youth in her district with mental health resources. The exact plan remains unknown as Garner has not discussed it directly with NBC Palm Springs as violence continues.
Seems every few days we are getting either reports of shots fired, whether we locate evidence or we don't locate evidence.
And for now, Chief Reyes' message remains the same.
There's a lot of people scared, and there's a lot of innocent people that have been targeted, and we need to put an end to this.
Palm Springs police say they also have evidence that 2 other people may have been injured in this incident. They're asking anyone with additional information to come forward. As for the next move by city leaders, that is still to be determined. Olivia Sandusky, NBC Palm Springs.
Well, the numbers are showing that more patients are recovering from COVID-19, but the work for medical staff is far from over. And as our Kitty Alvarado shows us, technical healthcare workers are saying they aren't being given the necessary protective equipment to stay safe themselves.
What do we want? What do we want it?
Dozens of technical healthcare workers picketed outside Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs to call for more personal protective equipment, or PPE. Gisela Thomas, a respiratory therapist at Desert Regional, says she's been a healthcare worker for 48 years, and this pandemic is unlike anything she's ever seen.
In the beginning, when we had the HIV crisis with the virus, when it first came out, that was bad, but this is nothing compared to what we're going through right now.
She says they're given one set of PPE per shift, making them afraid to get sick with COVID-19 and expose their families.
We're fighting for ourselves and we're fighting for our patients. You know, my sign says we are essential, but we are not sacrificial.
Todd Burke, a spokesperson for DRMC, says they follow all CDC guidelines when it comes to PPE, including providing fit-tested N95 masks, shields, and all necessary protective equipment to keep their staff and patients safe. And they're never denied more if needed. But this phlebotomist says it's more about PPE quality.
We have torn, gowns. That doesn't protect us. It doesn't protect our patient, and it doesn't protect our families.
Their union is in negotiations with a hospital. They also want pandemic protections in their contract. That includes hazard pay, virus sick pay, and hotel vouchers. Burke says they value their employees, but are disappointed the union is taking this approach as they've only started bargaining and will continue to negotiate in good faith.
They call us healthcare heroes. We want to be treated like that.
Kitty Alvarado, NBC Palm Springs.
The economic shutdown and restart and then re-shutdown have put a lot of people in financial distress. Californians are desperate to work so they can pay the bills. But as our Nico Payne reports, one city in neighboring Imperial County is striking out on its own, declaring all businesses essential.
Yes, Imperial County has been heavily impacted by coronavirus, and the mayor of Imperial tells me the problem is not the way the state wants them to run, but rather the timeline in which they're allowed to open. He is asking for a chance to prove that small businesses can be safer than big box stores.
This has been literally hell on everybody.
People in Imperial County are desperate to open up.
Not just on a financial standpoint, but on a mental standpoint.
City officials agree that's why last Friday they circumvented the state.
We adopted a resolution for the city of Imperial declaring that we considered all of our businesses essential.
That means all businesses in the city are now considered essential and can reopen as long as they follow masking and social distancing guidelines.
The city of Imperial, the council of Imperial, is not choosing to be defiant. We are looking out for business owners. We are trying to support those businesses that need the most support.
Imperial County is a rural community that has been heavily impacted by COVID-19. It had the highest death rate in the state. The situation was so dire in early July, the county had to transfer more than 500 patients as far away as Northern California. At one point, 1 in 5 people tested were testing positive for COVID-19, a 22% positivity rate. That's why as other counties begin to partially reopen, Imperial County has been stuck under more stringent guidelines. But the mayor says the strict rules are hurting his city.
We continued to still have local residents leave our county because of these restrictions to go to Mexico, to San Diego, to Riverside, to Yuma, in order to engage in business, in order to conduct their lives.
The mayor says the positivity rate in the city has now dropped to 17%, still a ways away from the state's mandated 8% threshold, but hospitalizations have also decreased 19% in the past 4 weeks. Labor leaders who work to keep employees safe say it's too much too soon.
The issue that I see is the fatigue. We can't be lax just because of the fatigue. We're all tired. Every one of our resources are being stretched to no end. And I also agree, small businesses are absolutely the backbone.
Our intent is simply to support those businesses that are floundering, that are dying on the vines, that can operate safely, and indeed more safely than a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Walmart or a Costco, which are letting in hundreds of clients at a time.
Part of the ongoing process as communities struggle to come out of the pandemic. Nico Payne, NBC Palm Springs.
Coronavirus coverage brought to you by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of eastern Coachella Valley.
Taking a live look now, courtesy of our Agua Caliente Casino cam, as we check in with Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett at the AccuWeather Forecast Center. Mike.
Gino, I'm just pumped full of optimism right now because we, first of all, are very close to a weekend. It's Thursday. We've made it almost there. And as we approach this weekend, the final one of August, we got some really nice changes moving in. It was hot today. Couldn't sugarcoat that. 116 is where we got to. Still 11 degrees above average. Nowhere near record territory, though. 121 set back in the early 80s, so we were well below below that. Overnight temperatures falling into line a little closer as well. 83 in the overnight hours. 77 is the 30-year average for this time of year, but nothing close to those 90s that we were tracking last week. In fact, considerably drier than it was this time last week, and that makes it more pleasant despite the fact that it's 116 out there. So, for the optimism. First of all, the excessive heat warning that's been in place will be allowed to expire in just under 2 hours. 8 o'clock tonight, all of this color will go away. Now, this color will stay in place. The heat advisory that's in place for the Inland Empire will remain until 8 p.m. on Friday. Temperatures will remain well above 100 there, and that's very unusual for them. So, yeah, we get to clear that out tonight. They get to clear that out tomorrow, and that's going to set us all up for a really good-looking weekend. Here's what's happening. The big picture, I've got infrared zoomed way out because you got to look really hard to find this optimism. The low is basically right off the British Columbia coast up towards Arizona. The frontal boundary that's associated with it will swing across the west coast this week, and we will be the beneficiaries of that. It's going to take temperatures down about a good 10 degrees, and the timing couldn't be any better. We're talking about Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I'll show you the numbers in a moment, but let me show you what we're doing right now. We've knocked 6 degrees off of our high, currently sitting at 110 at Palm Springs International. Wind coming in from the northwest. We're perfectly okay with that. Sustained sitting at about 12 to 15, gusts up to about 20, and humidity back down where it should be, 8%, hot and dry. Next 3 days brought to you by Comfort Air. 112 on Friday, becomes 108 on Saturday, becomes 105 on Sunday, and the overnights are going to make a return to the 70s. Yeah, it's a weekend worth getting excited for. We'll talk more about that and your 7-day forecast coming up.
Well, Palm Valley has been approved for a waiver for in-person classes. The school says K through 6th grade kids can now get back into the classroom September 8th. The private school was one of the few to apply for a waiver from the county. So far, no local public schools have applied for that waiver. That decision is up to the districts.
Indio's launched a mobile census site. English and Spanish-speaking representatives from the Census Bureau will be there to help you fill out the form. It's all part of a rush to complete the census before September 30th deadline. The census determines how congressional districts are drawn and how cities get federal funding. The site will be located at the AM/PM store on Gold Center. It will be open from 1 to 5 in the afternoon, Wednesday through Friday, this week and next.
A pop-up drive-in theater is coming to Cathedral City. The Mary Pickford Theater applied for a special use permit, and the City Council unanimously approved it. They should be up and running before Labor Day weekend and plan to hold drive-ins to the end of February. Up to 51 cars are allowed, and it'll be just south of Highway 111 and east of West Buddy Rogers Avenue. They'll be showing Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Psycho, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Fiddler on the Roof.
Staggering new numbers out tonight on the future of malls across America. Just how many will be left in 3 to 5 years? That story's coming up.
And how productive are you when you work from home? A new study looked at what your boss thinks. Stay with us. Just over 1 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. A lot of people are still out of work, even though the housing market is seeing a rebound. 2 weeks ago, claims were above 1.1 million.
New reports find that 25% of the country's malls will close over the next 3 to 5 years. The pandemic is accelerating the demise of the indoor shopping mall that had long been underway in the past several years.
After just 4 months on the job, the CEO of TikTok is out. This is meant to improve the Chinese-owned company's standing with U.S. regulators. TikTok has come under fire from the government, and earlier this month, the president issued an executive order that would ban the video sharing app if they are not sold by their parent companies. Walmart now says it wants to join Microsoft in its bid for the app.
COVID-19 related cyber threats have skyrocketed. A cybersecurity firm says it has blocked nearly 9 million COVID-19 related threats in just the first half of the year. The vast majority of them were email based. Cyber criminals were reportedly shifting their focus to take advantage of global interest in the pandemic.
A new survey finds working from home during the pandemic isn't hurting productivity. No, more than 90% of employers say productivity during the pandemic is the same or better than it was before the crisis. 83% of bosses even say after the crisis is over, they plan to keep flexible work policies in place, like the option to work from home. Gino's laughing, but when I was working from home, when I had my in-home studio, I wasn't distracted by you guys. So There you go. I got a lot more done.
All I know is every time Mike had a weather hit, we had to call and wake him up. In fact, let's check in with him now.
I did not like working from home one bit. This is my happy place. In fact, as we go towards the weekend, the Coachella Valley is going to be your happy place. We are tracking some big changes that are going to make it way more pleasant than it's been for, well, a good long while. We'll take a look together when we come back. Welcome back. Here is a live look courtesy of our 111 Walter Clark Cam. That is some tranquility right there. You know what? It's all good news as far as the weather goes today. In fact, I got some changes I've been alluding to going into the weekend. You are going to love it. Even if you don't, I'm going to love it enough for both of us. I'll show you that in a moment. We need to fix this. 116 is what we did today, and as we were discussing earlier, kind of somewhere in between, well above average, but nowhere near record territory. Overnights we're running about 6 degrees warm as well, but again, so thankful that it's not that upper 80s, low 90s stuff that we were tracking last week when we had all that humidity in. There is some humidity out there. It's just very conveniently off towards our East Phoenix. Once again, seeing some pop-up storms this afternoon. Down towards Tucson as well. We've got a little bit of light reflectivity just off the coast near San Diego there. Nothing that looks like it's going to bring us any shower activity. In fact, we are quite dry and quite warm. There is some wind and some rain happening along the spine of the Baja Mountain range there, but nothing for us. Take a look across the west. In fact, we are very quiet. We've got some showers that are popping up across the Intermountain West. That's normal for this time of year. In fact, those afternoon storms love to pop up along the eastern edge of Colorado and New Mexico there as well. That low punching in from the northwest is going to bring us some very welcome changes as we go into Friday. Excessive heat warning, again, less than 2 hours, and this thing will be out of here. We're going to see some clearer colors on the map. That heat advisory in the Inland Empire will stay in place until tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Temperatures right now along the coast are delightful. 78 in Los Angeles right now, 77 San Diego, 112 in Havasu, 111 in Yuma, 110 currently in Phoenix, 106 out towards Sin City, and 97 right now in Bakersfield. We've got some temperatures here that are warm but cooling fairly quickly because of the dry air tonight. 103 in Desert Hot Springs, 112 in Coachella, 103 is also your number out towards 29 Palms. Very welcoming 72 up in Big Bear and currently 89 in Idlewild. That wind has been an issue this afternoon, but a very welcome one. Again, coming in from the northwest gives us some ventilation, about 12 to 15 sustained, gusts up to about 20 and 25 miles an hour in some spots. That'll stick with us until about 10 or 11 o'clock tonight. Then it all mellows out, gets back into single digits in the early morning hours of Friday. Mentioned dry air. Well, this is what dry air does. It cools very efficiently. So we get ourselves into double digits at 10 o'clock tonight. That hasn't happened for a while. We get ourselves into the low 90s by 2 a.m. and that's going to set us up for some low 80s in the early morning hours of Friday. It's going to be really nice. 112 is where we top out in the afternoon. 2 points riding in the mid to upper 40s. Look for 112 to be your high in Palm Springs and Thousand Palms. 113 in Indio, 102 in Joshua Tree, upper 70s in Big Bear, and 102 in Cabazon. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast shows nothing but great news this weekend. Not only do we get sub 110 starting on Saturday, overnights riding in the mid to upper 70s. It will warm up again next week, but nothing we can't handle.
Joining us now is Jeff Kreider. He's written numerous books on the history of the Coachella Valley. His most recent work involved the city of Coachella itself. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, let's talk about Coachella. The name itself, right from the get-go, is a mix-up.
Yes. The original name for the city was supposed to be Conchilla, which means little shell in Spanish. And even if you walk around the Coachella area or further toward the Salton Sea and you look on the ground, you'll find little shells there. But they had a mix-up going to the printer, and anyway, they decided to keep the name Coachella. That's what the printer came up with, and they decided it was too much trouble to change it. But people kind of like the name, so they just left it alone.
Well, let's talk about the development, because Indio at this point is a railroad station stop, so it's developing there. What had people develop a little farther south and east in Coachella, and what started that development there?
Well, the Southern Pacific Railroad came through the Coachella Valley in the 1870s, and it was really through the railroad that people started coming out here to begin with, following the old Indian trails, the old Butterfield stage route coming through the Coachella Valley. And as they started to come out here, there were a few settlers who started to, come out and explore the area. And they found that we actually had a really unique microclimate in this area where we could produce certain fruits and vegetables earlier than any other area of the United States, even earlier than areas in Arizona. And that gave this area a market potential that other regions did not have, even further south in the Imperial Valley. So that was kind of the impetus to start developing this area, and that was right around 1900, in the early 1900s. Of course, this area also became an area of fascination for tourists, for people for health reasons, wanting to come here to try to improve their health, just to get away from the city. I found through my research even articles, from like the 1920s and 30s, talking about people coming out from LA to see the wildflowers in the spring or to go hiking up in the Indian canyons. That's been something that's been going on for a long time.
You mentioned the segregation of Mexican-American families or Mexican pioneers, but it wasn't just Hispanics, was it? Because there was also, there's Japanese that also came out to work in the agricultural fields, and also African-Americans. Tell me about the racism that existed even then.
Yes, well, the first farm workers here in the Coachella Valley were actually Cahuilla Indians. Because as agriculture took off, the growers found that they needed more labor. And so they hired the local Cahuilla Indians to help out. And then as they exhausted that labor supply, they started using Japanese immigrants. And it was actually after that they started to use more immigrants from Mexico coming in, many of whom were fleeing the Mexican Revolution and then later the Cristero Revolution in Mexico. And then the African-American farm help that came in the 1930s and 40s, and they were fleeing persecution in the South and looking for better opportunities here in the Coachella Valley. So we really do have a mix. And then there were other people who came from other places as well. There were even some people of Mexican-American descent, who made some lateral moves coming from some of the copper mines and other mining operations in Arizona, and they came over here to the Coachella Valley.
All right, Jeff Kreider, fascinating topic, something I look forward to talking a lot about. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Coming up after the break, the latest as Hurricane Laura thrashes the Gulf Coast. We have more on the devastation and the power outages millions of people are suffering. Plus, Amazon releases a wearable device. And when we say it analyzes everything, we really mean everything beyond just your activity and your sleep. We'll explain when we come back.
Damage assessments are just beginning to come in from parts of Louisiana and Texas after Hurricane Laura made landfall last night. We know there are at least 6 deaths and 800,000 people without power. The governors of those two states in some ways say it could have been much worse. Chris Pallone has more from Lafayette, Louisiana.
Daylight and a first look at the destruction left in Hurricane Laura's wake. In Lake Charles, Louisiana, some 30 miles from the coast. Roofs left in shambles, trees ripped from their roots, and neighborhoods underwater.
I'm just glad that we are all alive. That's it.
Power lines flung across roadways, a local TV station's tower in a crumpled heap on the ground. Roads flooded in Lafourche Parish. In Westlake, near Lake Charles, a massive inferno at BioLab, a chemical plant that makes chlorine products just after the storm blew through, sending plumes of smoke into the air. In the storm's path, it's a mess of mangled metal, splintered wood, and debris.
We have thousands and thousands of our fellow citizens whose lives are upside down because their businesses and or their homes have been damaged.
After Hurricane Laura roared ashore overnight. A powerful Category 4 storm packing winds of 150 miles per hour, lashing Louisiana and southeast Texas for hours.
Windows broke out. Walls came in.
There's a roar like I've never heard before.
The governor of Texas touring the state's hardest hit areas, but says overall the state dodged a bullet.
Now, that of course doesn't help those whose homes have been hit, those whose businesses have been hit. And for those people, we want them to know that we are already working on the process of helping them rebuild.
That rebuilding just beginning across much of the battered region. Chris Pallone, NBC News, Lafayette, Louisiana.
Taking a live look now, courtesy of our Agua Caliente Casino cam. Let's check in with Palm Springs Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett. Hey, Mike.
Gino, tracking some wonderful changes going into the weekend. Before we go there, I just want to give you a live look as to what Laura is doing right now. This is a 1-hour radar loop, so this is currently what's happening right now. Storm has made its way well inland. If you were with us last night at 11, we saw this thing make landfall with a perfectly formed eye as a powerful Category 4 storm with sustained winds at 150 miles an hour. Now, as we just saw there, it's made its way inland, but it's still doing work, especially Memphis right now. Usually what it's called the northeastern quadrant. So this area right here of the storm is what they call the dirty part of the storm. That's where you get your gustiest winds, your heavy rain, and your potential for lightning and tornado activity. In fact, that's what we're tracking right now as we take a look at severe watches and warnings. Everything that you're seeing in the green is some variation of a flood warning. Everything you're seeing in the blue there is a tropical storm warning near Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah, wrap your head around that. Now, as you take a look at this blood red here, that is the tornado watch, but we can zoom that in a little bit closer and see that there actually are active tornadoes in place right now. We've got Doppler radar showing that rotation that determines that there are active tornadoes. This is just to the south of Memphis, Tennessee. There's Little Rock, Arkansas there. So the other tornado activity that we're tracking is just to the north of both of those cities there. And it's going to be a long night for these folks. If there's one piece of good news that we're tracking here, it's that this storm system is moving fairly quickly. In fact, when you zoom this back out and you take a look at radar, you will notice that this thing's moving north at about 15 miles an hour, but taking some very severe and strong weather through some major metropolitan areas. What's going to happen here is this thing's going to hook a hard right and take off across the Mississippi River Valley and then continue to bring rain. In fact, the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center shows this is the 5 p.m. update our time. It has it still with sustained winds at 40 miles an hour, gusts over 60, about 63 miles an hour, and making that northeasterly move at about 15 miles an hour. So it hooks that right early tomorrow morning, but then it's going to bring wind and rain, not tropical storm force, but enough to create some flooding concerns into places like Washington, D.C., and possibly even up to New York City as we go into Friday. And then about another 48 hours from now, this thing will be back out into the Atlantic and it'll be done with. Here's what it looks like when you put Futurecast into motion. The jet stream is moving right across the midsection of the country. So what it'll do is basically just rip Laura apart, but it will push that rain across the eastern seaboard and keep folks there nervous over the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, we're pretty quiet here. We've got that low pressure system that's pushing in from the north. It's going to do wonderful things for us this weekend. That excessive heat warning is allowed to expire tonight at 8 p.m. We'll dip down to 112 on Friday, and then look at what happens on Saturday and Sunday. We go sub 110 for the first time in a good long while. We'll be 105 on Sunday, which is exactly where we're supposed to be this time of year. But the thing that I'm most excited about, aside from the fact that we've got a weekend right around the corner, is getting those overnights back back into the 70s. That indicates not only dry air, but the potential to actually go out and do stuff in the early morning hours. Tracking some high pressure that will build again next week and warm us back up again, but nothing to the extent that we saw last week. Details and your full forecast just minutes away.
All right, thank you, Mike. Wisconsin investigators are finally talking about the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Meanwhile, federal prosecutors have launched a civil rights investigation into the incident. The shooting has now reignited protests across the U.S. Whitney Wild has the latest.
New details are emerging about the police shooting of 29-year-old Jacob Blake.
This community has been through some extremely traumatic events in the last few days.
Investigators say the incident started when a woman called 911, a dispatcher named Blake in a police call. Responding officers tried to arrest Blake with a taser but failed. When Blake walked away and leaned into his SUV, Officer Rustin Shesky shot him 7 times in the back. A knife was found under the floorboard of Blake's car, but it's unclear if police saw it before opening fire. Blake's attorney, Benjamin Crump, says he didn't have a weapon or pose a threat.
All Jacob Blake was trying to do was get in his car and get his 3 little boys away from a volatile situation.
Shesky, a 7-year veteran of the force, along with a second officer, are now on leave as federal officials launch a civil rights investigation. The shooting reigniting protests around the country. In Kenosha, after several nights of protests, last nights were peaceful. The calm comes after 2 people were killed and 1 was hurt when 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse opened fire on protesters. Rittenhouse was arrested Wednesday and has been charged with homicide. Crump says the treatment of Rittenhouse by police proves racial injustice in policing.
We have these 2 justice systems in America, one for Black America and one for white America.
I'm Whitney Wild reporting.
And just into our newsroom tonight, the family of Jacob Blake says he is handcuffed to his bed right now. That's what his uncle told CNN just moments ago. Police still won't say what he was originally charged with. Jacob is recovering from at least 1 surgery and is paralyzed from the waist down.
Coming up after the break, the sports world unites in a historic way as athletes from multiple sports refuse to play, choosing to stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. All the latest on who's still not playing and what's next for the NBA playoffs.
Plus, we're going to revisit our top local stories, including another deadly shooting in the same Palm Springs neighborhood, what the city and police are now doing.
Hey, welcome back. Time now for a check in your NBC Palm Springs sports headlines.
the largest, most widespread day of sports activism that our country has ever seen.
Yeah, the sports world is reacting to the shooting of Jacob Blake in an unprecedented way. First, the Milwaukee Bucks passed on the playoff game last night. Then, one by one, the other teams followed suit, as well as the WNBA, with millions expected to be watching the playoffs and hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising and broadcasting rights at stake. Players are leveraging their power and their platform. Other athletes in other sports followed suit. So Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer teams pushed pause as well. Women's tennis star Naomi Osaka decided not to play her semifinals match today in the Western and Southern Open. The tournament then announcing that it will be pausing play for the time being. The NHL postponed tonight's playoff games as well as last night's in accordance with the players' wishes. Several NFL teams canceled practices today, including the Washington football team, the Packers, and the Broncos. The big question, of course, is what will happen next. All three NBA games that were scheduled for today have been postponed. Players met last night and again today, and according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, they have decided to continue on with the season. Players still plan to meet to determine how best to use their influence, though, to affect social justice improvements. Play did continue on the diamond today as the Dodgers and the Giants in a doubleheader to make up for last night's game. Game one was highlighted by Dodger starter Clayton Kershaw, who is 13-5 with 25 starts at Oracle Park. Dodgers shut out the Giants in Game 1, 7-0. It's a quick check of sports. Game 2, by the way, still going on there for the Dodgers. Also, they played 7-inning games, which was like watching a Little League game. It was weird, but it's baseball. That's going to do it for sports. Mike, as your weather.
And if you think that's something, wait till you see the weekend. Details in your full forecast when we come back. Welcome back. All of our live looks are just phenomenal tonight. That sunset, courtesy of our Agua Caliente Casino cam, was wonderful. And as we look off towards 111 right now, this is our Walter Clark 111 cam. Looking over towards the river there, the tranquility of the water looking nice. We've got a beautiful evening breeze coming up and down the I-10 corridor tonight, and it just gets better as we go towards the weekend. In fact, let me show you what it looks like. Here's what we've got going on first order of business. Excessive heat warning that's been in place for the better part of this week. In fact, most of the month of August will finally be allowed to expire tonight at 8 p.m. for the Coachella Valley and down towards the Imperial Valley as well. Now, this heat advisory that's in place for the Inland Empire, including Riverside County, will stay in place for an additional 24 hours. So 8 p.m. on Friday, this one will be allowed to expire, and we'll all go into a very nice weekend. The temperature's still riding in that low 100s. In fact, 106 is a forecast high tomorrow for Riverside. So yeah, they're going to keep that advisory in place. Monsoonal moisture is just lingering, just sitting in Arizona and New Mexico and even into Colorado and Utah. And we're perfectly okay with that. That ridge of high pressure that was so powerful and so well pronounced last week has been kind of squished a little bit, and it will continue to do that as low pressure pushes in from the northwest this weekend and brings in some cooler air with it and keeps all of this well out of our atmosphere. That's going to keep us cool, but it's also going to keep us dry as well. We put Futurecast into motion. The remnants of Laura will get shredded to pieces by the jet stream, but will deliver heavy rain across the east. In fact, literally 1/3 of the country is going to be downright nasty over the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, across the west, things looking really good, even up into the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, everybody looking clean and clear there. Temperatures are delightful at the coast right now. There will be some marine layer cloud cover overnight tonight and into the early morning hours. Some of that will push inland as well, so if you do have some travel plans in that direction, plan on a very different atmosphere than the one we're seeing here. 77 currently in San Diego, 78 in the big city, 97 in Bakersfield, 75 out towards Santa Barbara, 111s in Yuma and Havasu, it's 110 in Phoenix, and currently 106 out in Sin City. We got 71 in Big Bear, and then here in the Coachella Valley, we got a massive spread. 103 in Desert Hot Springs compared to the 112 that we're holding on to in Coachella. 102 out towards 29 Palms, 86 in Idlewild, and currently 96 in Cabazon. That wind has been with us basically all afternoon. In fact, it peaked about 2 hours ago, but still sitting about 12 to 15 miles an hour sustained, especially along the I-10 corridor, where you'll continue to see those gusts up to about 20, 25 miles an hour. Again, coming in from the northwest, it's always welcome this time of year. Keep giving us that ventilation that helps us cool, and it's going to do it very efficiently tonight. In fact, something we haven't seen in a while is double digits at 10 p.m. And it just continues to cool nicely overnight, and that's going to set us up in a really good place on Friday morning. We're going to be in the low 80s. Dew points will ride in the mid 40s tomorrow. We'll peak out at about 112, so it'll be hot, but it's not going to be excessively hot enough to issue that watch or warning. 113 in Indio, 113 Palm Desert, 102 in Joshua Tree, 78 in Big Bear, and 102 in Cabazon. It just gets better from here. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast shows us sitting at 105 on Sunday and Monday, but the thing that makes me excited is those overnights that'll sit in the mid to upper 70s on Saturday and Sunday morning. You can actually get out and do stuff. Enjoy.
A shooting overnight in the Desert Highlands Gateway community leaves a 15-year-old boy dead. It's the third homicide in the area over the last month. And reports came in that shots were fired at the Santiago Sunrise mobile home park as well. Police say they've seen an increase of violence in the area.
It seems every few days we are getting either reports of shots fired, whether we locate evidence or we don't locate evidence. Obviously, we're still investigating these most recent 3 homicides over the last month now, and we are, diligently working to bring those to justice who are responsible.
Chief Brian Reyes says he plans to have a meeting with both communities in person to address concerns. They're asking anyone with information about the shootings last night to come forward.
What do we want? What do we want?
Tenant healthcare workers picket outside 11 hospitals across California, including Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs. They claim they are not being given the necessary protective equipment to stay safe at work. The union for the workers is in negotiations with the hospital, and they also want pandemic protections added to their contract.
We're fighting for ourselves and we're fighting for our patients. You know, my sign says we are essential, but we are not sacrificial.
Todd Burke, spokesperson for Tenet Health, says they have plenty of PPE and are following all CDC guidelines when it comes to its use. He says the workers have never been denied more if they needed it, and they value their employees, but are disappointed the union is taking this approach as they've only begun bargaining.
The economic shutdown and restart and re-shutdown have put a lot of people in financial distress. One city in neighboring Imperial County is striking out on its own, declaring all businesses essential. Imperial County has been heavily impacted by COVID-19. It had the highest death rate in the state. The situation was so dire in early July, the county had to transfer more than 500 patients far away as Northern California.
The city of Imperial, the council of Imperial, is not choosing to be defiant. We are looking out for business owners.
The issue that I see is the fatigue. We can't be lax just because of the fatigue. We're all tired. Every one of our resources are being stretched to no end. And I also agree, small businesses are absolutely the backbone.
The mayor says the positivity rate in the city has now dropped to 17%, which is still way above the state's mandated 8% threshold to reopen. Hospitalizations have also decreased 19% in the past 4 weeks.
This new pandemic reality has brought many new options into our world. Options like telemedicine, where you can consult with your physician via the phone, Zoom, or even FaceTime. And it's even brought the phenomenon of maskne. Ever heard of it? Mask acne? Well, it's a new skin condition created by wearing facial masks. It's not serious, so telemedicine is a great way to discuss the breakouts with your doctor. Award-winning local dermatologist Dr. Timothy Joshin has some answers for you and some silver linings of his own.
So, Dr. Joshin, tell us a little bit about this new phenomenon called mask acne or maskne.
I see this phenomenon all the time in my office, actually. It's one of the things that people come in to see me for. And, it's the just the moisture and the occlusion. And so people are getting these acne outbreaks from wearing their mask. The first thing is just do a little bit of hydrocortisone over the counter. It's the 1%, it's Cordate 10 or one of those. And just try applying it twice a day and seeing if it calms the skin down. The other thing that you can do is there are some acne products over the counter that you can get, and they include Differin, which is a retinoid. It's a very gentle retinoid, and it's really the mainstay of therapy for treating acne, whether you come to a dermatologist's office or not. So you can use that once a day at night because it is photosensitive. And you can also buy either salicylic acid products or benzoyl peroxide products and try using them as a wash.
And let's talk about telemedicine, which has become a great resource for both patients and doctors as a way to communicate during this time.
It's a really nice option for people who were afraid to go out and actually be seen in person. I have to say at this point in the COVID crisis, people are actually coming out to visit me more than they are doing telemedicine. In fact, I'm seeing a lot less telemedicine. But we're very, very, very good about making sure the patient is safe when they come into our office. This has been really great for people that are traveling or, they have a follow-up for surgery when they go away just on a holiday. So I love this for the future.
And through all of this uncertain time, Dr. Joshin, has there been a silver lining for you?
One of the things that's most positive for me personally is I got to spend the summer with my daughter because she was not going anywhere, and I was also able to be home with her. So I think that's really great. I also think it helps you to reprioritize your life, because there are many people out there like me who are workaholics, and you start to see what it's like to have a little bit more free time.
Wise words indeed, both professionally and personally, from the good doctor himself. For NBC Cares Silver Lining, I'm Sandy Newton.
Brighter Side of the News is brought to you by Holland RV, located off the I-10 at Washington.
Amazon launches its first wearable device called Halo. It can not only monitor your activity and sleep, but also your tone. It analyzes your voice to predict how other people might perceive your tone. The technology takes into account pitch, intensity, tempo, and rhythm, then assigns labels such as content or hesitant, or as well as positivity and energy levels. Users can opt out of the feature, though. Do you think it senses sarcasm? Probably not.
I sure hope so.
It would not.
I'm pretty sure that'll be my #1 reading.
There's no way that thing would understand me.
Bitter and angry. Does it register bitter and angry?
That's funny. So it's like the modern day mood ring, right?
Yes, which those things totally work, by the way.
Yeah.
I was around in the 70s. Those
foolproof,
work.
yeah. Have a good night.